In 2012, JCPenney did something no retailer had ever dared to do. They told the truth. No fake sales. No inflated prices slashed in red. Just honest, fair prices every single day. Within a year, they'd lost nearly $1 billion in revenue, and their CEO was fired. Because it turns out, we don't actually want honest prices. We want the feeling of getting a deal. And that feeling? It's entirely manufactured, and the people who manufacture it know exactly what they're doing. Welcome to Money, the channel where we pull back the curtain on the economic forces quietly shaping your everyday decisions. From the prices you pay, to the systems that set them, to the psychological wiring those systems are deliberately designed to exploit. If you're new here, hit subscribe and tap the bell. We drop new episodes every week, and once you start seeing the money mechanics behind everyday life, you genuinely cannot unsee them. That's kind of the whole point. Today we're going deep on one of the most powerful psychological tricks in the history of commerce, the sale price. Not the discount itself, but the mental architecture behind it. Why does a $40 item feel like a steal at $19.99, even when it was never really worth $40? Why do we feel smarter for buying something on sale, even when we end up spending more than we planned? And what does it say about us that even after we learn these tricks, even after someone explains the mechanics clearly, they still work? By the end of this video, you'll understand anchoring, charm pricing, the decoy effect, and the dark art of the manufactured markdown. You'll see these tricks in every store, every website, every menu you encounter, probably for the rest of your life. Let's get into it. Let's start with the single most important concept in retail psychology, the anchor. In the 1970s, two psychologists named Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky ran a deceptively simple experiment. They spun a wheel of fortune in front of participants. The wheel could theoretically land on any number from 1 to 100, but it was secretly rigged to always stop on either 10 or 65. Then they asked participants a completely unrelated question: what percentage of African countries are members of the United Nations? Nothing to do with spinning wheels. Nothing to do with random numbers. And yet, the people who saw the wheel land on 65 guessed, on average, about 45%. The people who saw it land on 10 guessed, on average, about 25%. A random number on a carnival wheel had silently pulled their answers toward it. This is called the anchoring effect, and it is one of the most replicated, most robust findings in all of psychology. Now take that effect out of the lab and drop it into a department store. The moment a retailer shows you a price with a line through it, the so-called original price, they have just set your anchor. Your brain doesn't ask, is this item worth $19.99? It asks, is this item worth $19.99 compared to $40? Those are completely different questions, and the second one is almost always easier to say yes to. The anchor reframes the entire decision. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The anchor doesn't even need to be real. In most countries, including the United States, it is technically illegal to advertise a sale price against a reference price that was never genuinely charged. The Federal Trade Commission has guidelines on the books, and retailers have found extraordinarily creative ways to dance right up to that line for decades. One of the most common techniques is something the industry calls reference pricing, and it works like this. A retailer will briefly, sometimes for as little as 1 or 2 weeks, list a product at a high price, just long enough to establish a legally defensible original price. Then they mark it down permanently and begin advertising the discount. The item was never intended to sell at the high price. That price existed for one purpose only: to become the anchor. To give you a number to feel good about beating. This is why furniture stores always seem to be running a sale. It's why mattress companies always have some event going on: a President's Day sale, an anniversary sale, a we're moving location sale. The sale is the price. The original is theater. And most shoppers never question it because questioning it would require a level of skepticism that our brains genuinely aren't designed to apply at the point of purchase. And here's the part that should really bother you. Even when you know the anchor is fake, it still works. Studies have shown that participants who are explicitly told beforehand that an anchor is arbitrary and should be ignored still allow it to influence their judgments. The effect is so deeply wired into how we process relative value that awareness only blunts it slightly. You can know you're being anchored and still be anchored. That's how powerful this thing is. Now let's talk about the nines. Why does almost every retail price end in 99 cents, or 95 cents, or just the number 9? A shirt isn't $20, it's $19.99. A car isn't $30,000, it's $29,995. This is called charm pricing, and it exploits something very specific about how our brains process numbers. We read numbers the same way we read words, left to right. And we encode the magnitude of a number primarily from its leftmost digit. So $19.99 doesn't feel like almost $20. It registers as 19 and change. That single dollar difference creates a categorical shift from the 20s down to the teens. That is psychologically enormous. Researchers have found that prices ending in 9 consistently outsell prices ending in round numbers, even when the round number is actually lower. There was a famous experiment involving a women's clothing catalog. The same dress was listed at 3 different prices across different catalog versions: $34, $39, and $44. The version priced at $39 outsold not just the $44 version, that's expected, but also the $34 version. The dress sold better at $39 than at $34. A higher price, an identical product, more sales. Because the 9 signaled something. It signaled a deal. There's a secondary reason charm pricing works that doesn't get talked about enough. Round numbers feel arbitrary. $20 for a shirt makes you wonder, why exactly 20? Who decided that? But $19.99 feels calculated, precise. It implies that someone ran the numbers, accounted for costs and margins and market rates, and landed on this specific figure. That implied precision communicates tighter margins, which implies less profit being extracted from you, which implies a better deal. None of that is necessarily true, but the implication is powerful. Now I want to introduce you to what might be the most underrated pricing trick in existence: the decoy. Imagine you're standing at a movie theater concession stand. You can get a small popcorn for $3 or a large for $7. Most people look at that choice and buy the small. $7 is a lot for popcorn. The math seems clear. But now the theater adds a medium popcorn. It's priced at $6.50. Suddenly everything changes. The medium costs nearly as much as the large, but it's about half the size. So now the large looks like an obvious value. You'd be foolish to get the medium. So most people get the large, the same large they would have skipped entirely just moments ago, before the medium existed. The medium was never meant to sell. It was placed there specifically to make the large look reasonable by comparison. This is called the decoy effect, or in academic literature the asymmetric dominance effect, and it works across virtually every pricing context you can name. Software subscription tiers, cable packages, wine lists, streaming plans. The silver tier exists to make the gold tier look like common sense. The entry-level option exists to make the middle tier look responsible. The entire pricing menu is a psychological map, and it's designed to route you toward a specific destination. Once you see this, you'll notice it everywhere. 3-tier pricing is essentially a universal constant of commercial life. And the middle option, the one that seems reasonable, is almost always the one the company most wants you to choose. Now, Black Friday. Here's a fact that tends to make people genuinely angry. Academic researchers and consumer watchdog organizations have repeatedly documented that a large share of so-called Black Friday deals are not the lowest prices of the year. In multiple studies tracking prices over time using historical pricing data, researchers found that roughly half of the items advertised as Black Friday deals on major retail platforms had been available at the same price or lower at some other point during the year. Not most of the year, just at some point. The mechanics are often straightforward. In the weeks leading up to Black Friday, retailers quietly raise the reference price of certain products. Then on Black Friday itself, they slash that price back down, sometimes to exactly where it was, sometimes marginally below. The resulting discount percentage looks enormous. The anchor is massive. Your brain fires with the satisfaction of beating the system. And statistically, you may have paid a perfectly ordinary price while standing in a parking lot at 4 in the morning. Now, it's important to say, not all sale prices are manufactured. Real discounts happen. Genuine clearance events liquidate real inventory at real losses. Seasonal markdowns reflect actual supply and demand shifts. The point isn't that every sale is a scam. The point is that your brain was never built to evaluate sale prices rationally, and the entire architecture of retail was constructed around that specific vulnerability. Which brings us back to JCPenney. When Ron Johnson became CEO in 2011, he'd come fresh from Apple, where simple and transparent pricing was a core part of the brand identity. He decided to apply the same logic to department store retail. He scrapped the coupons, the doorbusters, the endless manufactured markdowns. He priced things plainly, fairly. He called it fair and square pricing, and in many cases the actual prices customers paid were lower than before. Customers were furious. Not because prices were too high, because they'd lost the game. Without a sale price to beat, there was no victory to claim. No rush of feeling clever or lucky or strategic. Shopping stopped feeling like winning. Revenue dropped 25% in a single year. Ron Johnson was let go. JCPenney brought the sales back. That episode is one of the clearest demonstrations in modern business history that consumers don't simply want good prices. They want the experience of getting a deal. They want the emotion of it. And when you take that experience away, even when the underlying prices are genuinely better, you take away the desire to buy. The deal isn't about money. It's about identity. It's about feeling smart. Retailers aren't just selling products. They're selling you a flattering story about yourself as a consumer. So the next time you feel that little rush at the checkout, the quiet satisfaction of saving $15 on something marked down from $40, take half a second and ask, was that price ever real? Did I actually need this? Or did I just win a game that was designed for me to play, by people who have spent decades studying exactly how I think? None of this means you should never buy things on sale. Real deals exist, and smart shopping is a genuine skill. But understanding that your sense of value is always relative, never absolute, that it's constantly being anchored to numbers someone else chose to show you, that's knowledge you can actually use. It won't make these tricks stop working entirely, but it will make you a little harder to fool. And in a world that is spending enormous resources trying to shape your decisions, being a little harder to fool is worth quite a lot. If this video changed how you look at a price tag, hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel more than most people realize. And drop a comment below. What's the sale you second guessed, or the deal you've caught yourself rationalizing? I want to read those. And if you want to keep pulling on this thread, to understand more about the invisible systems quietly running your financial life, you will not want to miss what's coming next.